If you just joined us, just let me know if you can hear me or not in the chat section, just at the bottom of your screen. If you just joined us, just let me know if you can hear me or not using the chat section. We're looking to get started. It's in a couple of minutes. Okay, I think we'll just get started there as more people start logging on. My name's Alex. I'm from the Leaders Award team, and welcome to our International Women in Engineering interviews featuring Yuli this afternoon. Just before we get to Yuli, I will run through what's going to happen during the session. As there are lots of people watching the event, we have muted everybody except for myself and Yuli for the whole event, just so there's no interruptions. The first part of the event will be Yuli's presentation, which will then be followed by the second part, which is the Q&A section. Please feel free to type in your questions at any point during this session. Hopefully then when we get to the Q&A section after Yuli's presentation, we can get straight into answering as many of your questions as possible. Please use the Q&A facility. This should be at the bottom of your screen to type the questions in. Or if you're on Facebook, please use the comment section as well. Just before we head over to Yuli now, I'm just going to explain a little bit about the Leaders Award. If you're an engineer, what would you do competition, and tell you what it's all about. So the competition's main aim is to inspire young people ages 3 to 19 to look at the world around them and design solutions to problems. We provide opportunities for you to meet and interview engineering professionals, just like we're doing today, to inspire you to think of ideas and start designing some of your own inventions. To help you with this, we've also got lots of resources on our website, leadersaward.com. Our suggestion is you make this into a weekly challenge, interviewing different professionals online every week, and provide a look at different problems in the world that you would like to solve. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Yuli. Hi, Yuli. I'm just going to make sure we can see Yuli and we can hear. Hi, Yuli, are you okay?
Hi, Alex. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Fine.
Fantastic. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and then you should be able to share yours now, Yuli, as well.
Okay. Okay, so you can see that?
Perfect. Yes, I can see that now.
Okay, right. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about what do civil engineers do. So I'm a civil engineer, and in particular, I'm a geotechnical engineer. And I'm going to tell you my journey into civil engineering. So at the moment, I am a chartered engineer, and I'm the chief civil engineer of the company I work for. And I'll tell you a little bit more about this later. And then I will conclude my presentation with what you will need to do if you want to be a civil engineer too. So let's get going. So have you ever thought what civil engineers do? Let's take a typical day. So you wake up in the morning, and the chances are one of the first things you'll do is to go and switch on the light, have a glass of water, or go to the toilet. But have you ever thought who makes all these everyday comforts possible? You may be surprised that it's civil engineers that make all this possible. So it's civil engineers, the people or the professionals that they build the power plants to generate electricity. They build dams or design and build dams to collect the water. And they also have to design a very complex network of pipes and cables that they bring water and electricity readily into our households. Civil engineers also design and build very, not that deep, tunnels that collect all the waste from our toilets, and they're also called sewers. Civil engineers also do our everyday living possible. So they build the schools that we attend and university later on, or offices, houses that we live. They build the cycleways and the pedestrian footpaths where we walk to go to work or go to school. They build the roads that maybe your parents use every day to give you a lift at school, or will be doing when we're out of the lockdown. And they also build the trains and undergrounds, and some people that maybe are watching us from London, they might be using the tube every day to go to school. Civil engineers also make our journeys to holidays possible. So whether we go by car, or we use a train, or we use an aeroplane or a big boat, it is civil engineers again that make all this infrastructure possible for the different means of transportation to operate. Civil engineers also are behind all our favorite food outlets, and I'm sure many of you will recognize the familiar yellow M from McDonald's that finally is open again. Civil engineers design and build fashion outlets, and also all the social media hubs that make or our Snapchats, our Instagrams and our tweets possible to go around the world. Civil engineers also design and build the places where we go for worship. So whether we go to a mosque or a church or a temple, all these structures too are designed and built by civil engineers. And more critically and very, very relevant, especially in recent months, civil engineers make sure that they take care of our health and make it possible by providing hospitals and medical equipment factories. And this is not just for us human, but also for our little fairy friends, like, animal hospitals. Civil engineers also help communities survive and recover from natural disasters. And what I mean by that is earthquakes, tsunamis and floods. So UK is not in a seismic zone, so we've not seen earthquakes, but we certainly have seen, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with the floods, especially in the winter time. So civil engineers are the people that go and reassess the damage and help communities to get rebuilt after the disaster. Civil engineers also build the right infrastructure, right buildings, to help us with research and to help build the equipment that we use for research. So, and this is a photograph here from Liverpool, from a shipyard, where the Sir David Attenborough new polar research ship is being constructed. So without civil engineers, there wouldn't be a shipyard, a building shipyard, and there wouldn't be the Sir David Attenborough polar research vessel. But above all, civil engineers look after our planet by making possible to use natural resources for us, so we can produce energy to power basically everything that we do. So civil engineers give us the infrastructure to use the wind power, to use solar power, to use geothermal. And what that means is that the heat deep inside has a lot of energy thermal energy captured, and civil engineers can build what we need to make use of this hidden energy, or even use power from waves. In conclusion, what I say and what I always say in my STEM talks, civil engineers make the world go around. And now I'm going to tell you how I ended up being a civil engineer. So I'm Greek. I was born in the north part of Greece in a small place called Werent, and I was not born a natural engineer. So in other words, when I was at the time that I had to decide what I want to do in my life, I had no idea that I wanted to be an engineer. One thing I did know though was I loved maths and physics. Not so much physics, but especially math. So I love that feeling of, yes, I can do it every time I managed to solve an equation. Also, my brother was decided to become a physicist. So he took STEM subjects to study. So he did math, physics, and chemistry. So in a way, he was older than me, and therefore I had a role model to look at. So I thought I'll go ahead and I'll take also physics and maths, and I'll go to a slight different direction. So I decided to go and study civil engineering, hoping that I would like it. And guess what? I loved it. And when you love something, it doesn't feel like work. So you put a lot of hours into what you do because you enjoy doing it. And by doing that, if you put a lot of effort and a lot of hours in something that you enjoy, you get great results. So my great results gave me a scholarship. And this scholarship was to leave Greece. So I was given the opportunity to come to England. So on a sponsored degree. And that's what I did. So I came to England and I completed my second degree in civil engineering. And then I moved on to do a third degree, or a postgraduate degree, or Masters of Science, as it's widely known. And I guess civil engineering is a bit like medicine. So most of the doctors, they do their general studies, medical studies, and then comes a point in their studies that they don't have to, but they can choose a direction if you want, and go and become orthopedics, pediatricians, oncologists, and so on and so forth. But something similar happens with the engineers if you want to. And you can go and take a specialization in fluid dynamics, dam construction, highways, railways, geotechnical. And geotechnical, it's funnily enough, it's a Greek word, and it means the earth engineering, or science of earth. And it's basically is engineering everything underground or above ground, anything to do with soil. Or, for example, designing and build the foundations for everything: houses, factories, roads, airports, and so on. And we'll see a few more examples in a minute. So when I graduated from a master's degree, I got my first job as a tunnel engineer, and tunnels are underground. So geotechnical, dealing with ground under our feet. And the line that I worked was the extension of the Jubilee line extension. Again, if we have any kids and parents that they're listening to us from the London area, they'll be very familiar with this line. I was involved in as a junior tunnel engineer when it was built. It was being built in 1996. And then when I finished with this project, I got the opportunity to go to Hong Kong. And that's the beauty of being a civil engineer. There's a lot of opportunity to travel and work overseas. So Hong Kong is called by many engineers paradise because it's basically a very small island and it's got a lot of people. So engineers, we're very fortunate to have the challenge and the excitement of always trying to think of new creative ways to create more space for people to live. So the obvious way, and the terrain in Hong Kong is quite mountainous, so there's a lot of mountains. So the obvious way to create space to build new houses is to cut to cut the mountains to create flat platforms to build houses like this. So you can see how the mountain goes, and we go and we cut and we make platforms to build new houses. Another way is to build underground, and you can build underground to have houses, as you can see, or more importantly, you can build underground to for transportation. So here what you see is a tunnel that goes underground and under the sea. So there's a little insert of this same tunnel. So this is the tunnel, so it's the concrete box. And this concrete box goes, this is the water, the sea. So it goes under the water and under the bottom of the sea. So all the way here. So it's quite fascinating. And another way to create land, which might come again as a surprise to you and fascinate as much as it fascinated me, is that we can create new land into the sea by just adding soil. And yes, there is ways to do that, and obviously engineers know how to do that, geotechnical engineers in particular. And I guess one of the most famous or well-known structures that was built like this is the Hong Kong airport, which was exactly that. They just created the whole airport, the land into the sea, by just filling with soil, engineered, of course. And at this point, I also want to give you some reassurance and introduce you to my family. So so while I was full-time engineer in Hong Kong, I found time to get married and make a family. So this is my two kids, Alexi, who is now 17, and Anna, who is now 20, and they were both born in Hong Kong while I was full-time engineer. So for the female audience of this webinar, please be reassured that you can definitely have a successful career in engineering as well as become a mom. And I promise you it's doable and it works. You just have to want to do it, and then you can overcome. And yeah, it's very manageable. So 10 years later, with a family of 4, we returned back in the UK, and I got my next job, which is to work for a company called Tensor, still geotechnical. And Tensor was the inventor of these funny looking products, which is they're plastic, and they're called geogrids. And what they do is they add strength into the soil. So that was a very fascinating fact for me that I heard, and I wanted to find out more. And the way I demonstrate how these products work, so they are just plastic, I kind of thought of how do I explain to children how you can add strength into soil with plastic. So I went into my shed in the garden, and I found a little flower pot like this. I bought some sand from B&Q, and I cut little samples from these big rolls of geogrid that we produce to send for construction. And I just build little sandcastles like this, just by putting 3 layers of this plastic. There's a second layer, third layer. There's the full sandcastle, as you can call it, done. Tip it upside down, just as you would do if you were in a nice sunny beach somewhere in Spain or Greece. And then you have a sandcastle. Now, as you would all know, and I hope you've all built one of this, but without this plastic geogrid, there's nothing much that this sandcastle can support on the top. So to make it visual and understandable to children, my goal was to support a 2-liter bottle of water. And I thought, great, so that's very, very demonstratable. Until the first STEM event that I attended with school kids like yourselves, and one boy said to me, so how much weight does this little sandcastle can take? I mean, it's great that it already can support 2 liters. And I just looked at him and I said, I don't know, I never tried, so we tried. And to our big surprise, this little sandcastle could take 3 bottles of water. So for the more grown-ups in the audience, that's 6 liters of water in a little sandcastle, just with 3 layers of plastic. And this is the magic of engineering. In real life, though, what that means, by the same technology, so by adding strength into soil, just loose soil, we can build very, very big walls to support railways on the top, or even new highways. And this is one of our tallest wall in the Middle East, in Dubai, 60 meters high. And just to give you a visual parallel, it's as tall as 15 double-decker London buses put one on the top of the other, as this picture is trying to show, or 2/3 of the height of Big Ben. And the other function of what we do with these geogrids is we make the impossible access over soft and wet soils, because the lorries or the cars sink in, possible. So we put the geogrid and then stone on the top, and then the lorry no longer sinks, because we've added this extra strength into the soil. So in my role as a chief civil engineer, I look after our 16 offices. The company is global, so we've got offices all over the world. And what that means is that I get to travel a lot. So civil engineers, they don't need to be at one place, stale and at one place for the rest of the life, you know, covered in mud. If you want to, you can travel the world. It's you can reach as high as you want, or you can stay as low as you want. So I get to travel a lot. So the yellow faces is where I've been so far, and the red faces is where I'm planning to be. And this is a snapshot of some of my journeys in the last 14 years. So Russia, Malaysia, Peru, Hong Kong, Colombia, obviously around UK, Seoul, Norway. And the reasons why I travel is to either go for meetings, for project meetings, go and do training to my colleagues in the different offices, as I mentioned, or even going site visits. And this is a visit in the tunnel, this is Crossrail actually in London. And the other reason that I travel, and I do a lot more of that nowadays, is because I go around the world telling people what I do, and the projects that we've done by using our technology. So I write papers of case studies of where we use these geogrids to create walls or slopes or airports or whatever else we do. And this is a photograph from such presentation in Seoul in South Korea. And of course, throughout all that traveling, especially nowadays, it's very, very easy to keep in contact with the loved ones. And this is me with my family on FaceTime, which we do every day when I'm away. But what about you? So if you like traveling, solving problems, helping the environment and improving lives, then you definitely enjoy a career in civil engineering. What you will need to study to become a civil engineer, as you probably know or heard or will find out, obviously maths and science is important, specifically physics, because you need to be able to measure and calculate lengths, weights, and measure forces and strength. But civil engineering is not just maths and physics. And remember what I said, physics was not my favorite subject, but once you start studying, you get to know what you need to know, and it's no problem. If I can make it, you can make it. And other topics that are very, very useful in civil engineering is geography or geology, because especially if if you're going to follow my steps and become geotechnical too, because you need to know the types of ground where you're building on. Digital and computing, well, I think after this pandemic, everybody is fully convinced that without our future and digital are synonymous, and what we do now would be possible without our digital skills or your education. As since your schools are closed, I'm sure you get a lot of homework via email or webinars or whichever way your school decided to carry on your education. But also, to become a civil engineer, you or any other engineer, you need to have quite a lot of creative thinking to come up with innovation, because there will be problems in the future that we haven't come across yet. So we need to have creative and new ideas to solve them. So art, design and technology are very good subject to go for, if you're thinking of following an engineering career. And lastly, languages and group sport, group work, or like sports, because civil engineering, no civil engineer works alone. Like I said so far, it's all about creative thinking. So you need to discuss your ideas and exchange ideas with a group of other engineers. And also, nowadays, these teams are becoming more and more global. So we often find that we work in the same project, no matter where in the world, throughout different offices around the world. So languages obviously also helps, because it makes traveling even easier. And the ways you can become civil engineers education-wise, there's different routes. I'd say these 3 routes are probably like the more direct ones. So you can study, you can do your GCSEs and then your A levels, and then go to university and do a Bachelor of Engineering or a Masters of Engineering, so a BEng or an MEng. Or you can go straight to work. So you can go and get an apprenticeship, and this is gaining a lot of momentum, and there's more and more companies that they do offer apprentices, and then you don't have to have the debt, because a lot of companies sponsor the apprentices to go and do a degree, so you work and study at the same time. Or you can start gradually, and you can start with a vocational course like a BTEC or an H&D and progress from there. And last, before I close and open the floor for your questions, my favorite part of my job, because I've been asked about it a lot, as this week is the International Women in Engineering Week. Well, the day is actually tomorrow, 23rd. So there's 2 things that I love about my job. The first is that it's exciting. So there's never 2 days are the same. I wake up in the morning and I don't know what the problem that I will be asked to solve is and where it's going to come from. And also the fact that there's never just one solution that solves the problem. So I can be creative and I can be innovative, and I can talk to people and decide on the best idea. But my most favorite part of my job is the traveling. So I get to travel the world, and I get to tell my story about civil engineering, and hopefully inspire more young people like you. And in a COVID-free world, I would be in military barracks like I have been in the last 2 years, talking with female engineers or female engineers to be. About my career and about any questions they have about how to become engineers, or be in any other STEM event demonstrating what I do. And you see the example there with the sand castles and the bottles of water. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
Thank you very much, Yuli. That was a brilliant presentation. Really, some really good visuals there, especially looking at the sandcastle and how much it could support as well. I think that was really interesting. We've just got some questions that are coming through now. So the first one is, you obviously have moved quite a lot and moved around the world quite a lot in different countries. What was it like when you first moved? So you first moved from Greece, didn't you, to the UK?
Yeah, that's what I say, that once you moved country once, then any other move is easy. It just happens. Yeah. So the younger to make the move, the better, because you don't think much about what you're doing. So at the time that I came over, I was 21 and I was just on my own. So it was very exciting, considering I've never been abroad in my life. I had never been on an aeroplane.
Wow.
So, but I just did it because it was just an amazing opportunity to get a scholarship to come from Greece to study to England. And then, I don't know, you just get through it. And I loved it. Looking back, I would do it exactly the same way again.
Emran's just messaged saying, how did you manage to find these different opportunities, and what tips would you give in order to succeed?
Opportunities is you keep your eyes and your ears always open, and because it's like sliding doors, so it comes to you. So when I was in England and the opportunity came to go to Hong Kong, we found that, I say we, me and my boyfriend at the time, now we're married, in every profession like civil engineering, any engineering, we've got our monthly magazines, and there was a little advert looking for geotechnical engineers in Hong Kong, and that was in 1996. And it was a case of, you know, you read the article and you put it aside and you think, yeah, that's for other people, not for me. Or you think, oh my God, Hong Kong, that sounds exciting. So that was exciting. Then we kind of looked, and those days, remember, we didn't have internet. But we looked through newspapers, whatever, encyclopedia, these big hard books, and that's it. The opportunities are there. You just have to have your eyes open to find them. Nowadays, opportunities are everywhere because of the internet. And yeah, I mean, through STEM and everything, there's just so much. If you are thirsty to go and do it, you'll find the opportunities. Yeah.
With there being International Women in Engineering Day tomorrow, have you got anything, obviously we're all in COVID at the moment, have you got anything planned for that tomorrow? Or I know you mentioned about things that you've done in previous years. What's been the most interesting thing you've done in previous years for International Women in Engineering Day?
Yeah, I think that was it. It was going to, because 2 years ago, I was very, the company worked for Tensor, the geogrids, one of the first organizations to use them, because it's an invention, so it's very innovative, and people needed to be convinced that they work. Like, not many old-fashioned engineers would put plastic into soil and land airplanes on the top. And the British Army was one of the first organizations that they believed in it, because they looked for solutions. And I forgot to say, it's a British manufacturer, so it's a British inventor. And so they were the first people we started working with way before I joined, back in the 80s. And I got involved a few years ago with the Army, and because I like talking about what I do and because I like what I do, they said to me, we'd like to come and talk to our female cadets. So the best thing I've done on the International Women in Engineering Day is to spend a whole weekend with planned STEM activities with female-only cadets. And
so you've done obviously, so you've done obviously a lot over the last few years in conjunction with this day as well. But we're very, very happy to have you doing this for us this week as well. So thank you very much, Yuli, for doing this today with us. I've also got a question here about there's obviously we're focusing on getting women in engineering and looking at that increase. Have you seen an increase in women engineering over the years since you started?
It's interesting, because in Greece and in Hong Kong, there's a lot more, and in the Middle East, despite the contrary belief, there is a lot more women in engineering. I don't know why in England is not. I think it's the wrong role models displayed on TV. So little girls want to be singers and go to X Factor. I remember when we moved back from Hong Kong and my daughter was 5, and X Factor was a big thing, and she was like, I want to be on X Factor, I want to be a singer, I want to be on X Factor. Thank God now she's studying law. She didn't follow engineering, but she kind of came out, because it's in your face, and this is what is promoted, and this is what we have to change. Yes, I think this is changing. I've seen a lot more noise around it, and obviously we're planting the seeds now. So hopefully in about 5 or 6 years, we will see a surge, because at the moment there's only 12% of females in STEM careers, and we have got to change that. That's not the statistics in medicine, for example. It's pretty much 50-50%. So we've got a long way to go, but there is a lot of noise. And like for this week, in Twitter and Facebook, there's so many activities going on. So yeah, I think definitely change is coming. Yes.
Are you currently working at home? Are you in the office at the moment? And are you based in the UK at the moment as well?
I am based in the UK. I work from home, but today I came to my husband's office because the internet was not very good. So that's again, and it's all about trying to find different ways of thinking. So I could have just said, oh, sorry, my internet doesn't work. I can't do this. But you have to keep on thinking, like, persevere and overcome. So, and I think every engineer likes to have a lot of factor of safeties and has contingency plans. So by coming to the office, I was my contingency plan that, the internet is not going to drop out, whereas in my house, it might do this afternoon. So it becomes, being an engineer, I think it becomes a way of living and a way of thinking, which is not a bad thing.
Yes, I'm sure you've been quite used to using like the internet and working in this sort of way, working obviously all over the world.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not different for you in some aspects as well. Fantastic. If anyone's got any more questions, please send them in to the Q&A facility as well. I've got a couple coming through here as well. So with the Leaders Award competition that we're running, Yuli, we asked children to look at a problem and design a solution around that problem. And the way they do that as well is they design it using paper and draw their invention on that as well. Do you think this is an important aspect of engineering?
Absolutely, yes. And I think we have to capture the imagination of kids from the very young age. And I am an advocate to say that if we start talking to the students, to school kids when they're at, I don't know, 14, 15, 16, it's too late. My thinking is that we should go to kindergartens, when there is so much separation still and segregation. So, and we live in a small village in the northwest of England. And I think sadly, the more remote you are, the more evident the problem is. So the kids are pretty much, so they've got like a sewing club, and this is for girls, and they've got woodwork, and this is for boys. And the girls they're thrown with the dolls, and the boys are given the Lego. And it just doesn't make sense, because boys need to hold the doll because they're going to be dads, so they need to have the affection. And of course, girls love to play with Lego, and boys, like my son, he opted to go and learn to knit, not knit, what do you call this? Knit.
Yes, knitting.
Yeah, knit, but he's doing, now he's doing his A-level, so he's doing maths, physics, and classics. So he's getting his creative thinking. I think he's going to be some sort of an engineer, or he's not sure whether he's going to follow with engineering or maths at this stage, but he's adding the classics bit to it because it gives him this creative thinking, and also writing good English report, like having a good command of English is so important. So you can have physics and you can have maths, but I would not recommend further maths because it's all too restricted thinking. You need to be able to think outside the box. So yes, and that's the art thing. So I'm a great believer that it's, instead of STEM, it should be STEAM. So have the A after the E. Yeah, very, very important.
You've said about you've had lots of different opportunities and within engineering, but if you weren't an engineer, do you know what you may have been, or do you know another career that you would have liked to pursue as well?
Yes, just go and work for a charity, and this is what I'm gonna, well, hopefully when I will be able to step down, or even go part-time, I would just love to go and do charity work, because again, I only showed one slide, but there's just so much. So like, there's organizations, Engineers Without Borders, and there's so many, and there's a lot of young engineers from consulting firms or even contractors that they get sponsorships, and they go, for example, 1 year in Ghana, in Africa, or in Cambodia, and they help communities build houses, I don't know, out of bamboo or plastic bottles stuffed with, I don't know, sand, anything that is locally available. And this is where the engineering thinking coming. So you go there and you say, okay, I don't have bricks, I don't have cement, what have I got available? Well, I've got a big landfill full of plastic bottles. So I can fill them with sand, put them together, tie them with, I don't know, reeds from the bamboo leaves and make a shelter, you know? And so I would, yeah, I think that's what I would like to do. And I hope it's going to happen, because there's so much reward in giving is really, really good. Yeah.
I just want to say a big thank you to you, Yuli, for answering those questions there and taking time out of your day to show this presentation to us and doing this interview. So yeah, just a really big thank you to you for doing that for us today. And thank you for everyone sending in their questions in as well. I hope you've enjoyed answering those questions, Yuli, today.
I did. I loved it. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So yeah, very happy to be part of it. Yes, and fantastic job that you're doing for us, giving us the opportunity to talk about what we do, and also for hopefully kids to be inspired. So yeah, I hope some of these kids. I have got one person that she's now doing her PhD on permafrost in Canada, and she came to our office in Tensor, which is in Blackburn, to do summer work, summer placement from A levels, first year to second year. And she sent me a little message, and she said that I inspired her. And that's it. It's like, it's life worth living for. So, you know, I get goosebumps and very, very happy to be able, even if I inspire one child, it's, yeah, I've succeeded. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Just like Yuli said, those who've been listening, I hope you've been, I'm sure you have been inspired by Yuli today, and hope we can take on our Leaders Award competition and start designing some of your own inventions and use our resources on leadersaward.com. And please join us for our upcoming interviews as well. We've got lots coming up for our International Women in Engineering Day, but we're doing our week of interviews for that event. And please complete our online survey. I've link that into the chat and in the comment sections as well. So I think we'll end it there. Big thank you to you again, Yuli, and bye everyone.
Thank you, Alex. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.